Hello everyone, I'm Carl and in this video I will be making these basic wargaming hills out of expanded polystyrene. Now, these are not the most interesting looking hills, but there's a reason I designed them that way, and that is to allow the most flexibility in use. There's no detail but a lot of open space, so you can set up other terrain on top of them or leave them clear for your troops to move over. In your own builds you can make these as elaborate as you like, but if you're just starting out and need to build your terrain collection, this is where I will start. To begin with, I cut some piece of fiberboard to act as a base. Expanded polystyrene can be very weak even after it is reinforced, so this is important. It will greatly extend the life of your terrain. Next, I took some sheets of expanded polystyrene. That's the white stuff that things get packaged in, the bubbly stuff that breaks easily and makes little bits that stick to everything. It can be annoying to work with, but it's very widely available and practically free. If you can find sheets that are the right size, go for that. In my case, I had some that were about half the thickness I wanted, so I glued two sheets together, adding a little bit of salt in between so it wouldn't slip around while the glue sets. It's an alternative to using cocktail sticks to pin stuff down in place. Next, I glued the bases on the sheets. Here I made a mistake and put the glue on the sheets instead of on the bases. Don't do this, it just makes it messier and harder to cut. Instead, apply the glue to the bases, then put them on the sheets. I put some weight on them to make sure that everything stays flat and solid. Once everything is set, I grabbed a kitchen knife and started roughing out the pieces using the base as a guide. In this case, you want the longest knife you can find and use slicing motions. I'll link a video from Bard's Craft in the description where Lucas explains the technique in more detail. Unlike Lucas, I'm using an unmodified kitchen knife on expanded, not extruded polystyrene, but with some patience the cuts can be reasonably clean. That said, watching Lucas cut stuff is surprisingly relaxing, so I definitely take a look. Spoiler alert, this stuff squeaks a lot as you cut it. Put on some nice music. Once you have the shapes roughed out, turn the piece over and start beveling the edges using the same technique. I'm going for stylized terrain here, so the sides are fairly steep. Once the angle of an edge goes over 20 degrees, it's going to become dead ground since your miniatures will start falling over. I prefer a simple plateau, so there is no slightly uphill or slightly downhill. You're either on the hill or you're off the hill. If you have a hot wire table, you can of course use that, but I figure that if you have one of those, you're beyond making basic hills. So maybe you might want to check Frankie D. Crafter's expanded polystyrene Aztec-inspired temple. You could do that with a knife, but only if you have a lot of time on your hands. Once the rough shaping was done, I took some 320 grit sandpaper and started smoothing everything out. Anything over 120 grit should do, but avoid lower grits as they will rip the polystyrene up really easily. Also, be careful not to catch the polystyrene with the edge of your sandpaper, or you will gouge it. What I'm going for here is a rounded surface. I don't want to get mirror smooth, I just want to remove any straight lines. Pay particular attention to the glue line if you have one. The glue is harder than the polystyrene, so it will tend to stick out. With the sanding done, I taped the pieces to some handles so I could paint them more easily. I took the texture paint I prepared in the previous video and slopped it on the pieces. It was a little thick, so I did a little water to help it run better. In hindsight, this was a mistake, as I will show later, but it's easily recoverable. In this step, I'm texturing, priming and sealing the foam in one go, which is a fairly good deal in my opinion. Once the paint had dried, I went back to check the coverage. There were some spots where I had thinned the paint down too much and looked too exposed, and some recesses where the paint hadn't sunk in, so I did some spot fixes. I also slopped more paint in places where the glue line was visible to break it up. Once the patches had dried, I painted everything with a very thin green wash and did some dry brushing with a mix of Mars brown and yellow ochre. I had previously experimented with burnt umber and ivory, but that makes it look a bit more stony. The orange dry brush makes it look a bit more earthy in my opinion. Most of this will be covered up with flock, so you can skip this step if you like, but I prefer to do it anyway, so I can make the flocking patchier. Just think it looks better that way. With the dry brushing done, I applied a spray sealer. This stops the runoff from the flocking, from stripping off the thin layers of paint. I painted the surfaces and parts of the sides with a layer of thinned down PVA glue, about half glue half water, and sprinkled on some flock. For larger areas you might want to work on small patches at a time. Let it dry and shake off the excess. Next, I wetted the flock with wet water, half alcohol and half water, and applied more tin glue to seal everything in place. And that's a batch of very basic hills done. You can already use this in your games, and of course you could also use this base to make more interesting terrain. I hope you found this video interesting, and if you have, please hit the like button and share it with someone who might find it useful. I'm thinking of making another video about picking sizes for your terrain, so that if that is something you might find useful or have questions, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching and see you around.